I guess I haven't played with enough. Maybe that's one way to do it.
Hey everyone, you may have heard me mention before that I recently started a Discord server for the podcast. If you want to join the conversation over there, you can find a link in the show notes or on the homepage of this podcast at secretsonics.co. In the coming days, I'm going to be sharing a sample pack there with some of my own personal samples that I use all the time in my productions. This pack will only ever be shared on the Secret Sonics Discord server, so I hope to see you there soon. All right, back to the episode. And so you just made a record, right? You have an EP you just put out?
Yes, it's been a couple of months, I think, yeah.
So tell me about making that record. What was that like for you?
It was written actually a long time ago, and I feel like it was one of those things that I'd been kind of talking about releasing it for a while, and then MPW just took up all of my time, and I was like, okay, right, I need to get this out at least before the end of the year. So the songs were probably written a year and a half before they came out. So and they all have their own story, and they're all a little bit different, but they're tied in that they, I think, were sort of created around the same time. I feel like it goes through a bit of a journey. So there's like Zombie, which is probably one of my favorite tracks, but it's a little bit out there, so maybe it's not for everyone. But I just love there's kind of this Eastern vibe to the sounds that I didn't mean to have in there. And I think a lot of people say that, I can hear that Indian influence in your music, which I don't know how that happens because I don't try and do that. It just kind of happens, I guess. But yeah, there's definitely that kind of Eastern vibe in that song. And I had a great time playing with a few vocoders in that. And then it kind of moves into this poppy track, which is Hover, which was the single. And that was really fun shooting the music video for that and everything between lockdowns and stuff. So it was good to get that in. And that was the first time I used like drones in a video clip, which was really fun. And and then it kind of goes into this instrumentally interlude sort of track called Thunder and Rain. That track itself, I feel like in 2.5 minutes or something, tells a bit of a story. It starts off very minimalistic and then kind of builds up to this instrumental part with all the different elements. And then it ends with like a acoustic-ish track called Think About Yesterday. And I've never really written a song with just guitar, which is pretty much all that song is. There's a couple of other elements where a couple of synths and bass sounds come in towards the end, but the main crux of that song is just the voice and a guitar. Sort of sampled guitar mainly because I don't play guitar very well. So I just just played it a few times and then used a little piece of it. But yeah, so that every song is quite different, but I think they fit really nicely together and hopefully do take the listener on a bit of a journey.
Yeah, amazing. And so you produced it, like everything. It was all you, right? You did everything yourself.
Yeah, everything except for the master, which was done by Clinton McCreary in London, who's excellent.
Amazing. Do you have an approach to, when you're taking your songs from like, the production element to the mixing element, do you take it out of the session, make a new session, or is it kind of all building one thing in the same space?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And I've tried a few different approaches. So I did try, bouncing everything out and then bringing it back in and having a separate mix session. But I felt like I was sort of redoing a few things again. So I stopped doing that essentially and just started having everything in the one production session. And then just, but you I think do need to have a bit of a stop and start where you say, that's it with the production, and now I'm just going to work on the mix and look at each element from a mixing perspective rather than from a production perspective. Because if you're trying to do everything,
they're different headspaces, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you're trying to do everything all at once, you probably don't do a good job of either, and then you never really finish because you're always adding things or something as a producer.
Yeah. It's important to know when, like, okay, we're stopping this and we're moving on.
Yeah.
But I guess it is helpful to have access to the production when you're mixing. But I feel like it just becomes like, for me at least, I just find like all the VSTs just like to start to add up, and you're freezing tracks, and everything is still kind of in that, I don't know, like a production's a little bit messier than a mix for me at least.
Yes, that's
and
definitely true.
That definitely kind of like eats at my concentration when I'm trying to mix something in the same session. I don't know if
So
you find the same thing.
you're a bouncer, are you?
I've become, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But from I'm not working in Ableton, you know what I mean? Like I feel like with Ableton, people are very much kind of, Ableton is so much a part of the sound of the production, and it's hard to kind of, from what I understand, it's hard to leave. Like I spoke to a guy named Daniel Englister who co-mixed the Noga Eras record, which is a pretty big record from Israel. And he said like they couldn't take it out of the production session in Ableton. So he had to kind of take the Ableton session and just take it from there in order to mix it.
Okay.
Like it was like impossible to remove the production elements. And I think the way because I'm working more like traditional, I would say, in terms of like how my tracks are usually arranged and instrumentated.
Yeah.
That's not a word, instrumentated. But I don't know. Yeah, it seems like it's harder to separate in the Ableton world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, when I wasn't mixing my own music, I would definitely do that, as in bounce everything out and send it to my mix engineer. Yeah, maybe in some ways it's just easier to start with the session and go from there.
Yeah, I guess it depends.
Yeah.
And do you have like any templates that you're using to kind of get sounds, or like mixing templates? Stereo bus processing, anything like that? Or it all kind of just depends?
I do have a couple of templates. Let me think, actually, off the top of my head. So I have a couple of different parallel processing templates for drums. So things that I sometimes use to widen tracks, or like specific like parallel compression things that I just like the sound of, that I use in a few different tracks. And also I have like a parallel vocal chain as well, which is like to add a bit more of the high-end kind of sounds that tends to be in pop music these days, but not loads, I would say. I think I try to keep things fairly specific to the track of whatever it needs.
I mean, I guess if you're mostly producing your own music, right? Everything is very, very specific, and you're kind of coming at it from that artistic, artist perspective, kind of more of like a blank canvas makes more sense.
Yeah.
I feel like because I'm working mostly with other artists, not my own music, I feel like there are some things that, you see as commonalities, and you could kind of say like, okay, cool. Like doing this kind of drum thing usually works, or like, this stereo bus usually works. But, when it's your own thing, it's more building it from the ground up, I think. So what did your mastering engineer, what did you feel like he pulled out of the mixes that maybe wasn't there before? What was that transition like?
Well, I know that when I got the masters back, I was pretty much blown away. I think he does a great job, and there was a lot of presence all around. Especially, I feel like there was a lot more balance, I guess, as well, like between the different elements, and some things that I didn't realize the mix needed, he somehow pulled it out. I guess it's hard to generalize across all the tracks, and I think also my mastering ear is not that good that I can exactly work out, what he's done to it, which is something that I'm sure I can build on. I just remember thinking that being surprised actually at how much the master can do to the mix as well. So I think you can't really underestimate the power that a good master can have on a song.
Totally. I feel like for me, mastering is like the first thing I started delegating, right? It's like the first thing I was kind of said, like, let me get somebody else to listen to this and like quality assure that everything is okay, because by the end of a mix, I've lost all of all objectivity. So it's like nice to have somebody else to say like, oh no, you did this okay, or maybe you didn't hear the subs as well as I'm hearing it. Like let me just make sure that's in check. I don't know. Like I've been down the road of like doing everything myself for my own music, and if I do it again, I think I want to add more people along in the journey, because I feel like that's what I've kind of been learning is like it's nice to bring other people in. So mastering is like the first step.
Yeah, for sure. And like I think with mastering, it gives you something to eventually hand over the project to someone else. Because I think without that, maybe we can be left to keep tinkering forever. But when you're like, okay, I need to actually send this off to my mastering engineer, then there's no changes that can be made after that step. So for me, I think I need that. Otherwise, I'll probably never let things go, or I'll go back to the production during the master or something like that. So I think for me, that's important anyway.
Yeah. Nice to make a cutoff and be like, okay, starting here, it's no longer in my control, and I have to let things be as they are,
Exactly.
Let things be. Yeah, totally. The last thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of like your production and mixing is I just noticed how like ethereal it is. Like, what's your approach to getting space, reverb, getting things to sound luscious?
Reverb?
Just tons of reverb.
Yeah.
Just douse it all
reverb
with
everywhere. No. That's not what we want. But I love reverb in parallel, I think. Because I do love reverb, but obviously when we just overuse it, things become muddy and it's just not that clean a sound. But when you have reverb in parallel, especially when you're like got maybe a sidechain compression to the actual sound, like talking vocals specifically, I think it keeps the clarity, but also has that ethereal bed with the reverb. So I'm a big fan of doing that.
like ducking the reverb when the vocal is
Exactly
active.
Yeah, exactly. So
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'll often do that with the reverbs and delays as well. So just so when the actual dry or main vocal comes in, the reverb and the delays just duck out, but then they can kind of pop back through when the mains have stopped.
When there's space.
Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah. I think I should probably mess around with ducking more. I usually do like automatic. I just do like throws usually. Like I'll like, throw to the delay or the reverb at the end of a statement or something.
Okay.
But the ducking thing sounds like a fun way to mess around with it.
Yeah.
I just haven't done it.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
Do you have any favorite reverbs that you think sound the best? You could shout out if you want.
So I'm a big in the box person myself with Ableton, mainly because especially as a teacher of it, I try to not bring in heaps of other plugins and things that people need to either buy or separately download. So I actually love the stock plugins that Ableton has. So I do use a lot of that in my production. And also, yeah, like Valhalla's Supermassive is just so fun. It's so fun to play with. And also being a free plugin is handy as well. Yeah, Ableton reverbs work great as well.
Amazing. I guess let's listen to it, to the Saw segment, so people can kind of hear it for themselves. One of the tracks off of your record, Think About Yesterday, right? That's the one?
Yeah.
Awesome. So you sent me this track to have a listen to. So let's have a listen to it for about 90 seconds, and we'll talk about a little bit what went into that production itself.
Sounds good.
Sound cool?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Today's been so yellow, and I'm wondering what has changed. It's only that you're gone. Your voiceless, been a constant